I'm going to go live on Facebook. And looks like we're getting ready. And let's, oh, I have to put a name for it for both. Dramatic. Okay, we're going live in 3, 2, 1. It's going to take a second just to go live. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Veterans Action Council. We're having a discussion today regarding post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth. We council members are volunteers here. We're from different areas of the United States and are veterans comprising of various and all groups of the military. And we cross, of course, multi-generations. Today, for New Year's, we wanted to inspire y'all with how we arrived at where we are. And each one of us has had our own in and unique journey to help us arrive where we are currently. I myself, I'm Etienne Fontaine. I'm a director and owner of Berkeley Patients Group, one of the oldest operating cannabis dispensaries in the United States. We just turned 21 years last year, and we want to welcome you, of course, to Happy New Year. Needless to say, it's now 2021, and after a challenging year, we will look to inspire people with our stories. So today we're going to be discussing amongst ourselves post-traumatic stress. As you know, that post-traumatic stress is not specific to veterans. It crosses into emergency workers, healthcare workers, everyday life. We are a microcosm of society. So we wanted to give you our aspects because each of us have had our own experiences in the military. Some of us combat, some of us not. But we have each found ourselves having to deal with post-traumatic stress. And because of that, we had to work through our issues so that we could arrive at our post-traumatic growth. I'm not the same person I was when I came from my war, and I doubt I'll be the same person 10 years from now. But at the same time, we wanted to give you some pointers on how and where we arrived. So the first discussion is going to focus on, um, um, oops, 1 second there. I had an issue technically. Why is that not moving? Pardon me 1 moment. Having some technical difficulties. 1 moment. Go. Okay. So our first question we'll have to do is, what was your post-traumatic stressor culmination moment or moments? What was the transition? What was your transition to post-traumatic growth? So the question is centering around uh, At what point did you come to realize that your post-traumatic stress was affecting you and those around you to a point that you realized that you needed to get some assistance? Who would like to start?
I'll go first.
All right, Council Member Bass, go ahead.
So I came back I was in Iraq with the 1st Cavalry Division in 0405. And I was planning to retire after I got back because my 20 years were up. And I got a bonus year because of a stop loss. So my 21 years were up. And when I came back from Iraq, my experience was very different than my previous combat deployment, which was Desert Storm, where I commanded a electronic maintenance company at Log Base Echo. And I wasn't involved in, actual combat operations. But when I was in Iraq with the 1st Cavalry Division, it was a completely different experience. And when I came back, I noticed that I had these strange symptoms, nightmares, hypervigilance, paranoia, anger outbursts. I was riding my motorcycle recklessly, which I'd never done before. And I was getting ready to retire. And so I didn't feel like I should go out into the civilian world with these symptoms that I didn't know what they were. And so I checked myself in early 2006. Went over and signed myself in to the mental health clinic at Fort Hood. And that same day, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder by a Army psychologist and an Army psychiatrist. And the psychiatrist sent me to the pharmacy to get a prescription for psychotropic medication, which is the first time I'd ever taken a medication like that. And I didn't like it. I didn't like the side effects, but I wanted to get better. So I stuck with the regimen like a good soldier. And then I retired in May 06 and transferred over to the VA hospital in Temple, and was being treated by a psychiatrist at the clinic in the Temple VA, who of course continued the regimen of psychotropic medications. And I faithfully, took my medication every 8 hours for 5 years, morning, afternoon, and night. I would take this pill. And after 5 years in 2011, I asked it was late 2011, I asked the psychiatrist at my appointment, I said, how much longer am I going to have to take these medications? Is this like the rest of my life or what? Because I said, I really don't like the side effects and I don't want to take these pills the rest of my life. And he said, we're not even going to discuss you stopping this medication for 2 more years. And so that was my low point. I didn't feel like going on because I really hated these pills and the side effects. And so I felt like I needed to take some action on my own because obviously the doctor had his mind up about what the treatment regimen had to be. And so I had been researching on the internet and I discovered the concept of medical marijuana, which was a new concept for me. And Mexican ditchweed was easy to get where I live here in Texas. But I knew I needed a higher grade medicine if I was going to try medical marijuana. And so I did gain access illegally to medical grade cannabis. And I used it as medicine for a whole year, the whole year of 2012. And the way I used it is I would vape a half gram with a PAX vaporizer every evening. And I would do that faithfully. And then on the weekend, in the morning. and in the evening. So, a half a gram to a gram vaporized per day. And by the end of that year, I had stopped taking the psychotropic medications and stopped taking the opioids that I was taking. And I had stopped washing down those pills with alcohol every night. And so I realized this works, this obviously medical marijuana works. And I wanted to let other veterans know that it worked, because I did not know a single other veteran who used cannabis. I was very secretive about it. I didn't tell anybody. And so I traveled in December 2012 to Austin and joined Texas Normal, who I'd found online. And they had their meetings once a month at a reggae club in Austin, the Flamingo Cantina. And I joined in December, got my little membership card, and I went back in January. And the executive director, Josh Schimberg, stood up on the stage and said, "We want to start veterans outreach to help veterans. And we need a person to help us with that." So that seemed like to me to be a sign from God. And so I told Joshua after the meeting, I said, "Hey, man, hey, I'm your man. I'm your man for this. I want to spread the word about cannabis as medicine." And Joshua said, "Okay, I'll talk to the board about it." And in a couple of months from then, I became the director of veteran outreach for Texas Normal. And that was my turnaround point. So my low point was when the VA psychiatrist at the VA Temple Hospital told me that I had to keep taking those pills for at least another 2 years. And my high point, my turnaround, was when I became the veteran outreach coordinator for Texas Normal, because now I was doing something positive, and the positive thing was spreading the message that cannabis is good medicine. So that's my story in a nutshell.
That's an amazing story, David, and that's a very special one, needless to say. Who would like to speak next on the issue? Michael, Robert, Tony?
Tony.
There you go, Michael. So, what was your post traumatic stress culmination moment or moments, and what was your transition to post traumatic growth?
Did you want to go, Tony? All right. So, yeah, I am not a combat vet, and my experience is a little different. I was hoping to sort of play cleanup and speak after everybody else talked, but I couldn't get away with that. But yeah, I actually I was at a conference in I think it was in Oregon, actually. Probably interestingly, maybe right around the same time, David, as what you're talking about, around 2012, somewhere in there. I'm not exactly sure the date. The Oregon Patients Out of Time conference that we did, and I had done some panels before with Al Byrne at these conferences, but he wanted me to talk a little bit before I talked about sort of some of the stuff that we were doing organizationally on clearing the way for cannabis as a treatment for post-traumatic stress. He wanted me to talk just a little bit personally. And I guess before I go any further, I should say I'm an Air Force vet. I was served in peacetime back in the 1980s. I helped found Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access, and we're the organization that wound up negotiating the VA marijuana policy, medical marijuana policy, with the Veterans Health Administration. That really kind of set the stage for working at the state level in a way. Instead of working at the state level to undermine the federal government, all of a sudden now we're working at the state level to basically implement the will of the federal government to help the VA treat the veterans. Very, very different perspective that we brought to the legislatures. And we looked at a lot of different treatments, a lot of different things: pain, cannabis for pain, cannabis for anti-nausea, appetite stimulation, traumatic brain injury, glaucoma, a lot of neurological conditions and stuff, and all of them very worthy. Pain seemed like maybe one of the front burner issues, but in many to most medical cannabis programs, pain was pretty well accommodated already, and especially like cancer treatments and stuff like that seemed like they were pretty well accommodated. What we saw as a gap was cannabis for post-traumatic stress. It just wasn't really at that time allowed as a qualifying condition yet. So anyway, at this back to this conference, Al asked me to talk a little bit about my own personal story, and I thought, okay, I just talked a little bit about how I worked when I was in the Air Force around the bombers, the B-52s that carried nukes, and how we were on this 45-minute clock. We were given this doomsday scenario where if those bombers left the ground, you had 45 minutes before the retaliatory strike hit, which just meant that we had 45 minutes that the rest of the civilian world didn't get. They didn't get that kind of 45-minute window to go do something with their life. And I had that 45 minutes all planned out, man. I assure you, I was going to be on the roof of my house with a bottle of Jack and a nice big joint and watching the fireworks display from a front row seat. And although it was really horrifying, it actually, it was an interesting plan that I had. But anyway, I was talking a little bit about the experience, about what it was like working around nukes and stuff. And I remember looking out at the audience, and everybody was sort of ashen faced. Everybody was just horrified by what they were hearing. And I thought, oh, maybe I should reel this back in a little bit. Maybe telling them, a little bit too much about my experience working around nukes. But it is quite a thing when you're in the military and you're that close to where the tire meets the road on the end of civilization. The Cold War, that was what it was all about. But personally, I until that speech, I hadn't really thought about myself actually having suffered any post-traumatic stress. But I think rather obviously, I definitely carried around a little bit of the trauma with me without realizing it. But the biggest thing, we were looking at this, as a project, basically to augment what the VA was doing, try to look at what the states were doing and figure out where we could have the biggest impact. And the reason why I knew we would have a big impact was already the experience that we had. Al Byrne sort of tapped into the Vietnam era experience, and he had worked with veterans in the VA system on post-traumatic stress treatments and counseling for many years. And then I also had a veteran out there in Michigan, Johnny Evans, who was adamant about, he's a Navy vet, and just adamant about taking this on and working on cannabis as a treatment for post-traumatic stress. He actually created this huge dossier, like 150 page dossier on like a research compendium at the time on cannabis for post-traumatic stress. One of our greatest allies in this area was Brian Crum down in New Mexico. And without Brian and the efforts of some local activists in New Mexico, probably we would have never got started, because that's what got us started. They worked on cannabis as a specific treatment for post-traumatic stress, unlike California that has, no list. It's just up to the doctor to decide, which is as it should be. New Mexico was the first to specifically list cannabis for post-traumatic stress, and their experience, specifically Brian's experience, was formative for us. But I felt like, as the leader of Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access, I felt like we needed to be super, super careful, because I recognized that we were up against the psychiatric community. The American Psychiatric Association has been really adamant about controlling the treatments for any psychiatric treatments, including post-traumatic stress. They really haven't been very specific in their opposition to cannabis. Like, they never really came in and opposed medical cannabis at large. They never came in, when we did Proposition 215 or any of the state initiatives, you never see the American Psychiatric Association writing some sort of statement or white paper against medical marijuana. But indeed, when veterans started using cannabis for post-traumatic stress, that's when they decided to raise their voice. And really inappropriate, because it was rather obviously a politically motivated position, and not a medical position. And that's, I think, the key thing for us. We're now at the point, fast forward like 10 years, and we've got every state virtually that has a modern medical cannabis access law has post-traumatic stress as a qualifying condition. And patients across the board, like Etienne, like you were saying, first responders, people who have suffered childhood trauma. A couple of the insights I could give you to just take away, it seemed for sure that the effect of post-traumatic stress is cumulative, that we're seeing a lot of vets that are talking about childhood trauma and stuff like that in the context of their experience in the battlefield, which is interesting. It's worthy of further study, that maybe post-traumatic stress symptoms are cumulative, that the trauma is not just from one single trauma, that multiple traumas over time could maybe put you in a bigger chance of suffering from it. And I think Al Burns' big takeaway from all this is that it's a normal thing, because it's listed as a psychiatric disorder, and because it's handled by psychiatrists. It's been unfortunately pooled in with a lot of different medical conditions that are very different from the way post-traumatic stress works. It seems to be really what Al would say. It's a normal response to an abnormal situation. And just because it doesn't affect everyone that is in that traumatic situation doesn't mean that it's a weakness of one person or another. It just has to do with a lot of different variables at any given moment. Like I said, even maybe possibly prior trauma. And those who come away with long-term symptoms that they have to deal with are not in any way, shape, or form, weak, or in any way, shape, or form, someone who should feel stigmatized. We felt when we embarked on this that, and we still, very much stick by this, that you should feel no more embarrassed for suffering from post-traumatic stress than you would going in and seeking treatment for a broken arm. Absolutely no more. And that's exactly why we felt like getting behind this as veterans and sort of helping people see the post-traumatic stress symptoms as part of the veterans experience might help remove the stigma across the board from patients seeking treatment. And I think it's helped. So, that's kind of where we're coming in on it. Really happy with the result. I mean, we haven't really seen any negative results. Been very organic. That is, the experience in each state has stayed within that state. The patients and caregivers and doctors and everybody that worked on each state were from that particular state. And we didn't really do any national promotion to give anyone the idea of using cannabis for post-traumatic stress. We felt like we wanted to make a toolkit available, and when doctors and patients within that particular state reached out for a tool, they'd open that toolkit and there it would be, and they'd find it, and we didn't need to advertise it. So it's been very organic and very natural, and in that sense, I think there's really there's nothing to attack, to remove it, or to oppose it. It's just a treatment modality that some patients find extremely helpful. And yeah, glad and proud to have been part of trying to give that treatment to people and help them find some peace. I think the worst one that I heard of was sleep. If you can't get a good night's sleep, seems like your whole world starts to crumble. And Dr. Sisley called the post-traumatic stress a constellation of symptoms, but picking out sleep and sleep disturbance as one of the key ones for me, I would say that would be one that you'd really want to solve. And I'm glad we're able to help people solve that.
Thank you, council member. Appreciate your perspectives as well as your history there. Councilmember Kowalski, Robert Kowalski. What was your post-traumatic stress culmination moment, and what was your transition to post-traumatic growth?
My realization started in a number of ways. It actually came to me in tidbits as what I would call little red flags that should have been picked up at the time and weren't. So I recall on my second combat tour overseas, my first red flag as to something was changing within me was when my roommate told me that I was speaking another language in my sleep. It was during that moment that something went off in my head to where I didn't fluently speak Arabic while I was awake, yet in my sleep I was speaking it fluently through scenarios. And so that was red flag number one for me. Red flag number two for me happened also during my second deployment. And during this time, I deployed with a civilian contractor. He was actually a detective out of Florida, I believe, on our police transition team, our police training team for the Iraq police force. And we broke off a quarter of the way through our deployment, and he went off to work at headquarters, and we continued on mission where we were and ended up changing AOs, and were able to set up a time to where we were able to link up with him, and we all met up after a mission one day and just sat around, and smoked and joked and just caught up as to like what was going on in our area and how things were. And I remember him making a comment towards the end of our meeting before he had to go back up to HQ, that he noticed a change in us, and he noticed that we had grown and matured rather quickly, that we weren't the same young guys that he had met when we first got to know each other prior. And so that was like red flag number two for me, as like how all of a sudden, I felt the same person, but here somebody that has seen a change in us in such a way that he made it known out loud. And then the last and final straw, and what really woke me up to the idea that something was really wrong, was after I returned home, and I went into what I call autopilot, and it got to a point to where I wasn't sleeping no more, and my body went into operational mode, but my mind would like shut down and take breaks, and I wouldn't recall what was going on, and I was losing time. I was losing longer and longer periods of time that I wasn't remembering things. And that was the turning point to where I realized I had an issue and I needed help. I went and sought help during service. This was in 2010. And it took about 6 months for me to receive help at the base I was at. And I felt I didn't have 6 months to wait. I was going down a dark path of drinking. And so that's when I decided, like Mike said, I noticed sleep was probably my biggest issue. And that was the one thing I needed to fix right away, in my opinion. And so I actually turned to cannabis to help me sleep. And it it helped almost right away. I took 2 weeks of leave and utilized that 2 weeks of leave and went home and got some cannabis, and I slept for almost 2 straight days. Um, and after that, I felt refreshed finally. I didn't feel um, like I was losing my mind anymore, and realized that there was probably something there. So I continued using cannabis up until I got uh, caught on a urinalysis, which ultimately led to my discharge from service with a general under honorable conditions. Um, but that was like the transition. But my rock bottom happened after that. It was that led to the rock bottom. After service, I became homeless um, due to my issues. Ended up actually finding my grandparents let me come and stay with them for a while. So I moved into their basement, lived there, worked through the VA, got put on a whole bunch of medication, was in a very bad and abusive relationship, to where I was being lied to daily about things. Um, and that was my rock bottom. And the turning point was a year after that, I finally got my rating through the VA. I got my back paycheck, and I was like, I'm leaving Ohio and I'm going west. I knew that I could legally gain access to cannabis out west. And so that's what I was going after. I didn't like all the medication I was on. I didn't like having to go and get all the blood work that was constantly being done, making sure my liver and my kidneys weren't shutting down from the medication. And so I bought a car with cash. I think I bought a Jeep for like $4,000, and packed up everything I owned and started driving out towards California. And I stopped in Arizona and um, met up with a good friend of mine who I had known for a while, and actually ended up staying in Arizona, became a medical marijuana patient there in Arizona almost immediately. And it was then at the turning point of me realizing I was more than what I felt like. Um, I ultimately was able to stop taking all my medication. And it was about a year and a half after that that the whole process of everything changed for me. And I was reached out to, very similar to Dave. And, they were looking for a veteran voice for this movement here in Ohio. Um, and I'd moved back for family issues and to be with family. And I stepped up. I was like, I know I can do this. I needed to talk about what I had learned in dealing with my own trauma, that it could potentially help others, specifically veterans who may be suffering the same way I was. And so I decided to put myself out there, to step up and be the person to talk when others feared to, in hopes that it would bring more like me out so that I didn't feel so alone. And it was through that I gained a feeling of purpose. And it was through that purpose that I found that as I started talking more and more, the groups got larger and larger. Next thing you know, I was traveling to more and more states. And it was then that I felt like my healing process had begun. Uh, it was ultimately through the purpose of helping others that I felt the true healing come forth as to, I'm here to serve. I chose to serve for a reason, and I'm gonna continue to serve until there's nothing to serve for anymore.
Absolutely beautiful, sir. Thank you for sharing. Council member Tony Landry. You're up, sir. What was your post-traumatic stress culmination moment? What was your transition to post-traumatic growth?
Okay, well, my culmination, first I want to say I got out of the military in 94 with some non-combat related injuries. So I've never been to combat or anything. And when I got out, I went to work, went right away to work with my skills that I earned in the military, electronic skills. And it led to further injuries and back surgeries. And when I guess the culminating moment, uh, PTSD, is I don't associate it as much with chronic pain. It's very possible to have it with chronic pain, but I didn't realize it was some of that going on. But it was culminating moment when the loss of identity from my job. I got out of the military with this high tech training and went to work, for 3 years out on copy machines and learning new technology there. And then when, that surgeries and stuff happened and, I'm sitting at home taking all this pharmaceutical meds, it just like a dark cloud, just physically, it's like I could feel this darkness that came over me, and it was very depressing, and um, just led to you know, trying to soothe the depression, and from not working, the pain, the medications would help, and but it seemed like I started drinking alcohol to along with it, and thank God it didn't take my life, but I struggled through it with alcohol for many years in Louisiana. I didn't have access to cannabis, so alcohol is so socially acceptable in Louisiana with all the the party festivals, Mardi Gras, and everything. So I could get away with drinking. It's just normal part of life. But it led to some behavior, uh, with family members, estranged from my kids a while. So I guess it culminated to where when I left Louisiana and I got out of there, and I still struggle with cravings for alcohol. Like in Arizona, I had access to medical cannabis, which was great. I could go into a dispensary and not have to worry about getting it on the street or getting arrested for it. And I thought that was going to take care of my cravings for alcohol, but it didn't. And I just kept struggling with it. And I found out about ayahuasca here in Arizona. It's like the plant medicine mecca here, Southern Arizona, from the history of the Indians using peyote and stuff. So it was available, and I tried it, and overnight it just ended the alcohol cravings. And so that was my break, because this meeting right here we're in right now, New Year's Day. This is the second New Year's that I've been through in my life, other than when, in teenage years, young years in high school, where I wasn't drinking. But the second time in my life I went through New Year's without alcohol. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing feeling. So I feel like post-traumatic growth is is upon me right now. I'm able to function like without waking up with a hangover. The cannabis, if I'm out the next morning, it's no big deal to wait until a dispensary opens up in here in Tucson. I can go to the dispensary and get some cannabis. But with alcohol, I didn't have uh, that easy of a time with it. It was a struggle. So I'm on my post-traumatic growth period right now, and I believe plant medicine is what enabled me to get here.
Well, thank you very much, council member. Appreciate that greatly. For myself, I was in the West Virginia Army National Guard. Was activated for Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and was attached to the French Foreign Legion as artillery support. Went through various battles And just as quick as I was in the desert, which I guess took longer, but I was evac due to some injuries to Germany. And when I was in Germany, I didn't like that I was on the morphine that they had me on. Um, it's Morphine's great if you want to sit and drool all over yourself. I'm not into drooling all over myself. I was an artist. I was actually in college at the time, on the GI Bill. So I was going through art school. So I was a creative person. So I noticed how absolutely mind numbing and non creative I was when I was on the morphine. So I talked to a officer who was my doctor there at the time and asked, "How do I get off this morphine? I didn't like it." And he laughed, and I laughed, and he said hashish, and we both laughed, and he stopped laughing. And for me, I realized this was kind of the start of my journey. And another month later, I was finally back home. I was stateside, and I thought I had was fine. I thought everything was hunky dory. I had survived my battles, being shot at, shooting, all that fucking shit. And it started pretty quickly after I came back. I noticed that the people that were my friends that I thought I knew felt like strangers. All the people that I was around, I just couldn't relate to anymore for some reason. And um, I couldn't make band practice. I was a musician as well. And so I had a band that I left when I went to war, and they kept it together while I was at war. And when I came back to playing bass in my band. Well, I couldn't handle sleeping. Next thing I know, I was trying to drink myself to sleep, and I was drinking heavily, and I couldn't get out of bed at 4 in the afternoon for fucking band practice. Couldn't do it for some reason. And I even was looking at myself in the mirror and was like, the fuck? You can't get up out of bed. You can't shower and fucking get your ass down to band practice. Nope. No motivation, no anything. Didn't give two flying figs about much of nothing, really. I was just very confused and frustrated. So now home no longer felt like home. I broke up with my girlfriend, because she gave me an ultimatum over cannabis while I was away from war. She over medicated and then had to go through rehab. And of course, rehab told her that, you can't support an addictive person and addictive personality. So, she gave me the ultimatum right after I got back, me or pot. And I was like, thank you. I'm going to keep the pot. And years later, I was able to apologize to her and tell her that it wasn't her fault. It was just, the post traumatic stress I was going through. But I couldn't. I couldn't be around my friends anymore. So fortunately, my battle buddy, who was in Morgantown at the time, uh, noticed this in me and was like, "Hey, why don't you come with me? My aunt owns a horse farm up in Smithfield, Pennsylvania, and let's get you on the horse farm." And it's best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't care about humans anymore. I didn't care much about anything. Dave, I gave a shit about because he was my battle buddy. He saved me even when I had my third heat stroke. He was the guy there, fucking saving my ass. Um, so I owe him my life. So, um, yeah, working on that horse farm showed me that, yeah, it gave me an ability to care again. It gave me ability to care about living things again. But I still couldn't connect with my family. I never expected to live in my war. because back then we were given, like you, Michael, we were given the Geneva Convention's Eastern Bloc breakdown, which basically they gave us artillerymen on the front lines and a whole 30 seconds survival once you fired your first round downrange. You get 30 seconds. So, I remember all of us counting down the fucking seconds, looking at our watches, and at the 31st second, we're like, yay! It's weird to think about, but it's one of those coping mechanisms when you realize, okay, I didn't die. So it was just one of those things. But then I tried to go back to school. And when I went back to college, I had a hard time going to West Virginia University, making class on time. I was in art school and I was a printmaker. So I started making art of the shit that I saw. I started making art of my nightmares. I started making art out of my traumas and put them up on the board for actual critique, which is, if you are in art, basically, critique is where basically everybody in the room gets to tear your art absolutely apart or praise it, whatever, but you usually get the prior, then more so the latter. And I had a hard time taking any type of critique on my art because the other artists were kind of freaked out by my shit because it was very graphic, very in your face, and it wasn't responded to well. And I didn't like my honesty or my projection of my honesty being challenged. So it turned out fortuitously that I made it back to my West Virginia National Guard unit. And the day of my promotion to E5, I got a call for a urinalysis to take a piss test because Clinton was trying to scale down the military at the time. And yeah, I popped positive and they pulled my GI Bill, and I showed up to college the next day, and the professors are like, "You got to leave. Sorry, your GI Bill's been pulled." And since then, I had formed another band in town, and it wasn't really going anywhere because unfortunately, I had a drummer who had anxiety issues, and which he was great in practice, but if you put the poor guy playing out live in a show, I mean, just poured in sweat. Just the whole reason that certain medications are created specifically for him. But I realized that my band wasn't going to go anywhere, and I had a friend who was like, "Let's go to we're in West Virginia." He's like, "Look, a friend of ours is out in California. Let's go out to California and do a band together and get out of here." My drinking had gotten really bad in town after I came back from working on the horse farm and going back to school. The only way I could find to cope was alcohol, and I was drinking up to and not including a fifth of Jack Daniels a night. Um, so it was really, really bad. And for me, my low point was realizing that I was now going around and passing out on couches at my friend's house. But there was one guy who had actually gone around prior to me, wasn't a veteran, just a heavy drinker. And he would pass out on their couch and then he'd piss on the couch. So he became the guy that wasn't allowed to hang out on the couch anymore or hang around parties and drink because he was going to pass out and piss on their couch. It happened numerous times. Well, I realized I was just one bad bladder experience away from being him. And that was kind of my self-realization, is like, I don't want to be the couch piss guy. I do not want to be that label in life. For some reason, yeah, I'm just going to turn into a lush in this town. And so that's when I decided I had to leave West Virginia and come to California. And it wasn't till I arrived in California for a few months that I got in touch and found an organization called the Cannabis Action Network. And this was in December of 92, spring of 93. And while I was there hanging out, I started just volunteering, making phone calls. And next thing I know, I was part of the organization and a director. And I started to find myself um, at rallies speaking as a speaker on my experience. I would just basically go to a mic and say, "Hi, my name's Etienne Fontan. I'm a Gulf War veteran," and I would start talking about my frustrations. So for me, I found myself working for free, but as a volunteer in doing this, and as Robert had stated, to found myself in service, started to find um, a light going on inside of me that was dark. I had been very dark until that point internally, but for some reason, volunteering with Cannabis Action Network and making people aware of their freedoms and their rights and challenging the drug war in a very challenging time, for some reason, caused that fire inside of me to not only find kindle, but to find a lot of kindling, so that for some reason that fire started to burn inside of me. Um, and so that for me, um, one of the first rallies I did. So we're going to transition here into the second one, which is the defining moment when you addressed your trauma in a more positive aspect. So for me, as I stated, I found a part of me that was able to grow from helping others that were in need, also rallying around and finding a voice in cannabis by being a medical patient and speaking my truth, finding support from, at the time, Dr. Todd McArea, who himself was a veteran and a leader in the cannabis community here in California. And it was fortuitous that the first Cannabis Action Network meeting I went to, he was the speaker. And upon speaking to him and realizing he was a doctor, not only that, he was a doctor who was fascinated in my Gulf War syndrome and the symptoms that I was having and dealing with. So he decided that he started to want to literally start to address my situations. Um, and the VA was not responsive like that, needless to say. They had nothing but negative situations to give me anytime I spoke regarding cannabis. So to find a person familiar with the VA system who was willing to document, on top of that, he became my doctor who wrote me recommendations for medical cannabis. So um, it became a kind of a education by immersion, because there's not much information back then around medical cannabis. So there was handful of us all around the country. So I was able to go out and do rallies in 47 states around the United States via the Cannabis Action Network, and giving speeches in every single one of those practically. Um, so for myself, I was able to kind of address my own trauma by speaking about it, and then finding an audience out there that would then come speak to me after my speeches. And it was inadvertently therapeutically helping me talk and confront of my own issues, so that I was able to finally um, realize and start to move past some of my issues. Um, but I'm still working toward them, 30 plus years later. So, it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing learning and relearning experience. So we'll start back out to defining moment when you addressed your trauma in a more positive aspect. Who would like to speak on this now?
Well, for me, it's, I never felt like I was a shaman, or I didn't have any medical expertise. But what I could do is tell veterans my experience. And so What was most therapeutic for me, as we all know, the key to growth and recovery is positive action, not just sitting around talking about what we want to accomplish. It's actual positive action. And so for me, regardless of all my other fuck ups, when I could look a veteran in the eye and educate them about cannabis and tell them about this plant, about the different methods of using the plant, the difference between indica and sativa, and give them good advice based on my personal experience. And then have that veteran come back to me and say, man, I vaped cannabis. I went and bought a vaporizer and I vaped some cannabis. And that was the first good night's sleep I've had in 10 years. That is very fulfilling to know that you've helped another veteran just by your witness and your testimony. And so all these years later, every time I open my email, Texas Normal email, there's a new veteran there almost every time, that got my email address and wants to talk about cannabis. And every time I go to a in-person event, new veterans will come up to me and start wanting to talk about cannabis. And so for me, talking to other veterans and educating them about cannabis, that's the positive action. And so at the end of the day, when I look back on my day and say, these were the positive things, these were the negative things, the positive thing, the most positive thing is that I reached out and talked to a brand new veteran. And now that veteran knows the important message that cannabis is good medicine.
Right on. Well, I see we have another guest who has joined us, so I'm going to back us up a question. I'm going to go over to Council Member Pearson Crosby. Welcome, sir.
Yeah.
I'm going to start off with the first question, which was, what was your post-traumatic stress culmination moment? And what was your transition to post-traumatic growth?
Right on. Yeah, so I've been listening the entire time. I've been out trying to take advantage of the daylight, unfortunately. So it's getting brighter and brighter each day. I guess it's not a rare story, or it's not to myself in the way that what I went through, but it was a stereotypical, unfortunately, a stereotypical case of being over medicated. I got out out of the Marine Corps after 2 deployments to Iraq in 2008, and I was beat up. My body was destroyed, and I don't blame the doctors and nurses for prescribing me the incredible amount of narcotics that they did. I think they weren't trying to hurt me. They were trying to make my quality of life better, but it turned into a serious addiction. And with that, I went through it for a while, got pretty bad into the pills that they were giving me. I was prescribed to like anywhere from, I want to say tops was like 13 different medications at like 23 to 25 years old. And like, it wasn't just like 1 or 2 heavy narcotics. It was like Oxycontin with MS cotton, which is morphine sulfate, and then Klonopin, fentanyl patches at the same time, oxycodone for breakthrough pain and sleep meds and what else? All types, just wild stuff. I was on injectable testosterone for a while because my test levels were low from a blast that I was in. And yeah, I mean, they're just throwing everything at me. Off-label prescriptions. If anybody's watching it doesn't know what an off-label prescription is, when the FDA prescribes or allows for a certain drug to come on the market, doctors are pretty much allowed to prescribe any drug as long as they see it being able to help the patient that is already approved for the FDA, that isn't actually a prescription that was developed for that single purpose. It was just found to be helpful with those symptoms after it was given the thumbs up in the food chain, the legal food chain of medications. But yeah, I mean, I turned to heroin. Ended up getting picked up, spent the night in the Philly Roundhouse, which is pretty much like the drunk holding cell, and got diverted to something I had never heard of, which is a veterans court. So Philadelphia Veterans Treatment Court picked up my charges, and that was probably one of the toughest things I've ever went through. I've gotten all the way through, special forces selection, and I think 13 months of veterans treatment court was more difficult. But it was something that really, held my feet to the fire. And I think I was going for treatment. I was going to the VA, well, at that point 6 days a week minimum, because I was on the methadone clinic, or the methadone maintenance program. I'm going to be specific with the maintenance part of that, because there is no future getting you off of methadone. It is just something that's maintaining you from getting back into heroin or illicit drugs that the government isn't giving you, which that really, so just looking back on the methadone clinic, it was a 20-minute drive, no traffic, from Bensalem, Pennsylvania to South Philly, or University City in Philly. But the only times that the window was open to get your methadone 6 days a week were right in the middle of rush hour. So it'd take hour and a half each way, 6 days a week or 5 days a week. So that sucked. But Veterans Court, while I was in there, I mean, I guess I was terrified of going to jail. Not guess. I mean, I really, I still am. I mean, I don't want to go to jail. Not that I'm doing anything wrong, but I knew if I went to jail, I'd probably, like, in the mindset that I was in, and the things that I know I'm capable of, I didn't foresee myself ever getting out, even if it was a short sentence to begin with. But I mean, I could just be, delusional. But Veterans Treatment Court really, they kept an eye on me completely. They were lenient. They were understanding. It was something that I never fathomed could exist in the criminal justice system, but it does. And I mean, in a lot of ways, I gotta thank Philadelphia Veterans Court for their for what they do every day. And it saved my life, and I've seen so many other people's lives that it saved, so many other veterans. So with them, while I was going through that, I mean, it was pretty clear that I was going to be going to jail if I didn't stop doing anything with it besides the stuff that the doctors gave me, specifically cannabis. Cannabis was the only thing I couldn't get out of my system, but it was the only thing that was keeping me away from a lot of medications. When I got into veterans court, I was so addicted to benzodiazepine and opioids. Man, I mean, there's no point to me even elaborating on that. It was, people die from all this fentanyl. I was getting prescribed fentanyl 50 microgram patches and 25 microgram patches to be put on at the same time. MS cotton, which is extended release morphine sulfate, and oxycontin, and Percocets, all same day. Like I have the list of prescriptions that I was taking that are all active, and I was taking them like, you know, I was always calling in early to get script refills, and they'd always give them to me. But I realized it was going to kill me. I think I had overdosed a few times at that point, with at the point of coming into veterans court, and I locked myself in my apartment with my ex-girlfriend, just locked myself away for a month, probably a little more than a month. The physical stuff really sucks, but the mental stuff is something that really keeps you hooked, and that's what kills a lot of people. The mental aspect, you're like clean for a couple months, and you decide to relapse, and you shoot a couple bags of heroin, and you don't have the same tolerance as you used to. But during that month, all I allowed myself to have was cannabis. It is in that state of mind was the only thing that gave me any type of relief. I mean, for 3 weeks straight, I was tossing and turning, just cold sweats on the couch, trying to like sleep on the floor and get like the cold floor, and then get back in on the couch because I was freezing and sweating at the same time, and I'd be freezing, and I didn't want to. It sucked. But cannabis helped me get through it. I mean, it didn't by any means, take away the pain of withdrawal, which is you're literally feeling like you're gonna die, like for like days on end. It sucks, but cannabis helped me get through it, and I gotta give it the props that it deserves. And I feel like if I could do it, other people, other veterans, citizens, other human beings should know that if you're hard up on these drugs, whether or not you legally got hooked or not, it's something that can really help. And it's not, and by all means, it wasn't a miracle drug for me. It still sucked, but I knew smoking cannabis or eating edible infused, I wasn't going to get it. I wasn't just replacing it like methadone for another drug. And I mean, it contributed to me being here right now. I mean, I never expected to live past, I never expected to live past 22 after I joined the Marine Corps, but I don't know, I just keep on like putting all these other marks in my way. So shit, I'm 35 soon. So yeah, I'm glad that it's something that it's not too strong, not too soft, and that it's not something that you're gonna, you know, rob your mother for, or, steal a car. No, I didn't do either of them, but I mean, some people do for that shit. So Cannabis really helped there. Once I got done with that and I graduated from Veterans Court, I became a mentor at Veterans Court. And I did that for 2 or 3 years, which was awesome. I was helping out the people that helped me. I mean, there are some superstars there, and I'm last time I spoke to him, I keep in touch with him. Frank Romeo, the probation officer, like you never expect a probation officer. Like, you never grew up thinking, or not grew up. You never think that a probation officer actually cares. Maybe you do. I mean, he was the only probation officer I ever had, and uh, he was one of the absolute greatest people I've ever met, along with Peg Maynard, who was the VJO, and Judge Dugan. It's pretty crazy how many veterans' lives they touch, and this is Veterans Court across the nation too. There's like, I mean, last time I checked, 492 veterans courts that are active throughout the United States. And I know Pennsylvania was trying to get one in every county, and they really do allow veterans to, get a grip on the shit that America asked us to do, and the reasons that they, if there's any reason or anything connected to a veteran's, arrest and their service, they snatch them up and they try to rehabilitate the veterans, make sure that they're going to their therapy, going to anything that's really requested by the VA for them to do, and have a treatment plan, have mandatory work if you're able to work. It's just it's a great program. I can't speak any more highly of it. I miss getting to go there. And that's, I guess that was something when it started. It was, I found purpose again, and I think that's the gist of what everyone has brought up so far tonight. Like David, that's awesome. He was right. He was in the right spot at the right time, and it's just something that you why, what else is there to live for besides, like, if you don't have purpose? Like, and I'm not just speaking about having purpose, helping people, but something that gives you that warm and fuzzy, and it's not a material. It's not something that you have to work this job that you hate and look forward to the weekend of you going on your boat or something by yourself. It's something that really it's a check that you can. I mean, it's I don't know how to put this. I'm trying to put it in some philosophical way, but um, it adds up, and it makes you feel good about your situation, and it makes it so that you feel you are now responsible to live up to what you're preaching to these younger or older veterans, these veterans that are in need when they come in contact with you, and you don't want to let them down at the same time. And the more and more you do it, you're just like, well, shit, man, like I can't do anything fucked up, because like if I end up like how am I going to feel when like one of the people that I assisted with something, sends me a letter while I'm in jail or something, it's just like shit. You can't be a good role model when you're not practicing what you preach, and that kept me on the straight and narrow. And it's something that I although I mean everybody's talking about sleep, I get like, and I get the wildest calls throughout the night. I appreciate it. I am so glad they're actually reaching out to somebody. But it's taxing at the same time, but nothing worth doing is easy. And I really think that purpose that me being able to, I guess Socrates put it, the a life that is not, oh, shit, the invalid, I don't know, whatever Socrates said, something about life and making sure that you're reflecting. And I see myself in a lot of people that I help, and they're helping me at the same time. It goes both ways, even though it's not something that you can touch or feel. You can see it, you can feel it, and that's it. It's something that nobody else can get. It's between you and them. You know it, they know it, and you're both responsible to each other, right? You are responsible for the things you tame. You got to make sure you set a good example.
Right on.
Man, I talk too much.
Yeah, you say good things. We appreciate you, council member. All right. Who would like to speak on defining moment when you addressed your trauma? Tony, Michael, Robert?
Yeah, so mine probably be the best time I could probably explain would be after I got out to Arizona. Um, Before then, it was really about you know, rushing treatment. Not really. It didn't feel like I was getting understood as to what my trauma really was, or best way or avenue of going about helping me. But the big eye opener for me was I had a primary care doctor in the VA in Vegas VA system who I felt was completely honest with me, and the fact that nobody, she told me, she was like, nobody in our facility has the tools or the means of helping you until you understand your diagnosis and are able to help yourself. And that was like the eye opener for me, to where she then proceeded to tell me that I had to become an expert on PTSD and guide the medical professionals in um, in helping me cope with my trauma. And I took those words to heart and really dove into understanding through the various methods of treatment that I had already gone through, from CBT to prolonged exposure therapy, pharmaceutical uh, routes for therapy, just regular therapy talk sessions. I mean, there there's so many different avenues that they tried on the traditional scale, um, that once I realized that you could combine all of those into one working approach, was really the aha moment for me. And then taking that a step further and focusing on all of these various treatments that I was being given and what were the benefits of each, for me, and breaking it down into specific um, situations to where it helped break down maybe one problem I had. And it didn't so much help the whole situation, but it helped one situation, one small part of it. And it was through that's how I started teaching others, was um, taking the look at the type of treatment that we were getting on an individual level, and looking at it in your own life's view, and figuring out, is it actually helping you and where, and kind of trying to guide people through that. And it was through communicating it that way that the conversation, I found, started bridging gaps between my experiences as a veteran and experiences of members of the community at whole. as far as daily struggles in life that humans deal with. And it was, I think that the big turning point for me was bridging that gap between veteran and civilian, and understanding that just because our traumas come from different things, trauma is trauma, and we can learn from each other various coping mechanisms and tools to put in our own toolbox that actually work for us, knowing that everybody's different and not every tool is going to work for you the same as someone else. um, and that seems to be the common denominator in a lot of stories that we keep hearing, is that there are many tools in this deep hole that is post-traumatic stress. And that's exactly what it is. It's stress caused by trauma after you've experienced it. And it doesn't specify a specific type of trauma, it specifies trauma. And so I think there's a big growth and a big, as a good friend of mine put it, truth to power, in looking at it that way. And there's a lot of healing in looking at it that way and approaching it that way, and understanding that every day is a growth purpose for us. It is another day to where we get to use another tool or a tool to better our daily lives.
Absolutely. And key tools that help us cope and get by. And that's what we're here to teach as well as to learn. Um, Councilmember Tony Landry, your defining moment.
Yeah, the chronic pain, my defining moment, I mean, it's a tear in our muscles and that gives us pain, physical pain. And, so that defining moment happened right after my surgery, the emotional trauma disrupting my normal feelings of accomplishment and everything. That, I guess the way out of that was just realizing, each of us have some purpose here, because believe me, I tried with alcohol. I just every drink was just like, yeah, I'm not going to kill myself, but this is my way out. This alcohol is going to numb me. It's going to make me go to sleep, because the pain would keep me up for days at a time, sometime when I was struggling with it at its height. And so the defining moment out of that was just getting away from that environment and changing, what was keeping me in that loop. I had to break that cycle and get out of it. And getting out of Louisiana and getting safe access to other plants was the way out. That's what helped me. It wasn't the cannabis alone. It was just to get access to the plants, that let me step back and look at what I was doing, and I realized that's the only thing that I've never had that opportunity in my life, to say, oh wow, yeah, you're really messing up, and that's all it took, that little moment there, to say, oh yeah, this behavior is not helping you. The drinking it's not doing anything. You're waking up in the next day and you're still facing all these problems, but it's harder to deal with them because you have the alcohol. So that was just a defining moment. I set an intention, which is one big part of plant medicine. When you go into these psychedelic ceremonies, is set an intention beforehand that you're going to work on some negative behavior. And so I that was my last hope, was to go try this. Maybe it would give me some way to battle this. I mean, the minute I gained consciousness after drinking myself to sleep the night before, my first conscious thought was alcohol. When can I drink today? What do I have to do that? So it was just a big relief to not have those cravings to face. You know, it's hard enough facing the pain, but then when you stack a craving for a substance, say opiates or alcohol, whatever it may be, you know, on top of that, it's really a struggle to live, you know. So I think the defining moment for me to get out of that was plant medicine.
Thank you, member. Thank you, council member. Going over to Michael Crowitz.
Hey, yeah, man. I feel like there's kind of two different kind of medical cannabis patients that sort of exist in our world. The medical cannabis patient of today and the medical cannabis patient of yesterday are kind of different in that I probably, you know, I don't know, you know, how many of you have the same experience on this meeting, but coming at this from, you know, a kid growing up in the 1960s, 1970s, I had no idea cannabis was a medicine. You know, I remember hanging out with my dad, World War II vet. He was hanging out on the porch, just suffering through cancer chemotherapy treatment. And I had no idea that, you know, a joint so easy to get, marijuana, you know, it was virtually everywhere in the New York City area where I grew up, could give him so much relief, could actually give him some peace in those moments of just despair that he was just gritting his teeth and getting through, you know, every day. And that kind of genesis of looking at cannabis as just another drug, just another, you know, sort of a lifestyle choice or a cultural expression, really. And then slowly realizing that that is still that, it is that, but it's also a medicine, and that it's giving you a very, very specific and very well, you know, well-defined medical benefit, something that over time becomes very meaningful to you. And I remember, I don't remember exactly when that was, but I remember there was a very distinct change in my brain about how I looked at cannabis as a medicine versus looking at it as just a drug. And that was a big turning point in my life. I think that this idea of having a mission, of, you know, that you hear again and again from all our vets, is really interesting and important. I remember working with Dr. Sunil Agarwal. Dr. Agarwal was one of our team members in New York when he was in his residency. He helped us reseat the NGO committee in New York, working with Students for Sensible Drug Policy. And you know, him looking at me, kind of looking through his eyes at my life, it was just so obvious to him that I was getting a medical benefit from the very pursuit of trying to help others. And that's really interesting. I mean, it's a little bit out there. It's not quite exactly like what we're thinking or what we've been saying here, but it's very, very close. And it's so interesting coming from that medical, pure medical perspective of his, that he actually saw a distinct medical benefit in the pursuit of helping others. And not just that, but trying to somehow reverse the damage done by the military, maybe, you know, that the very military experience that we've had somehow tunes us in to a need that we then get a benefit, a medical benefit from trying to fill. And that's besides this notion of a mission, having a mission. I would be very curious, really, to compare civilians with military veterans in that regard. That would be one place. I mean, certainly there's no need to compare with post-traumatic stress as a medical condition. I see virtually no difference whatsoever, whether you're military or not military, in terms of the symptoms, how it works, the relief, everything. But when you join the military and you sign on the dotted line and you take that oath, not unlike the oath that you take to become the president or a senator or whatever, a judge, you're going to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. You take on a certain level of responsibility. And I think over time, somehow that gets into your bones, that you have that mission. I'd be curious if the civilian population has that same level of need of a mission, of a continued mission. I don't doubt that they do. I just be really curious. I would be very curious to do that comparison. And I think it's really important. And again, it might not be separable from the medical experience, you know, the helping others and having a mission. These all seem to be part of the healing curve. And I couldn't tell you where I went from one point to another, but I certainly feel the distance traveled once I look back, you know, at everywhere that I've been and what I've experienced. So yeah, having that mission, every day I get up and, you know, I'm immersed right back at that same point. You know, what can I do today to try to make things better? That's a really cool thing to be able to do, and to have that clarity of mind to be able to work on something that is actually producing a benefit is a little tricky in our world. So maybe that's something too.
Speaks volumes without speaking much. Says a lot. Council member Crosby, coming back to you then. Defining moment when you addressed your trauma in a more positive aspect.
Well, I guess it's going back to Veterans Court. But I think when I started, so that was something that I really, you know, it was something that I was doing collectively with other veterans, specifically one other veteran, Timmy Wynn. He's another Marine that he graduated before I did, but he's still working with the courts. He's actually an employee of the court, the Veterans Court now. But we started doing charity drives and stuff, and so it was really good to have like someone that understood, like another Marine that was going through similar stuff. We had obviously different experiences, different issues, and different coping mechanisms. But I think when I started really getting into powerlifting, which was around the same time, it's something that I did for myself, which I don't know, I guess it was something that I really dove into, that was for me. It wasn't, nobody else was benefiting from it. And I just worked my ass off. I mean, I set some goals for myself for the power lifts, and I made them. And I mean, I was at the gym once or twice a day for a while, to keep my mind on the straight and narrow. And I still never got that 600-pound pull deadlift though. 650 squat, and 430 bench press, and a 598 deadlift, but it still hurts. But it was something that I did for myself, that I was solely like, it was understood that it was like, this is something that, you know, I could be selfish about, because I would spend a lot of time in the gym, and my entire like diet was changed up. My sleep schedule, it might have been one of the best periods post military that I was getting a lot of good sleep, mainly I think because I was putting myself into a food coma, and smoking on top of it, smoking cannabis on top of it. So it was a good 1-2 punch for me to sleep decently and wake up early. I think that was like how I solidified in a way outside of the camaraderie avenue. I think when it comes to recovery, at least with substance abuse, with compounding factors like PTSD or TBI and physical pain, you need it. Once you get dependent on those really strong, dangerous, deadly narcotics, you need something to overwhelm. You need things to overwhelm your senses. Things that are so much more important than you getting your next, pill or dope bag or whatever. I mean, you gotta have all these things in place, and I think me being able to, go every morning to the gym, throw on my headphones for 2 hours and just destroy myself, really helped out there. And I think that was like that continued discipline of lifting was something that really kept me positive, kept me moving. Because I mean, it's difficult to squat, 500 pounds when you're, on heroin. We're doing Klonopins every day. It's dangerous also. I wouldn't recommend it. So it kept me away from it all, and I was really proud of how far I came with powerlifting. I mean, I was up to, last time I could see my abs, I was 285. So I think that's it, and it really did get me to, like, I did all my books, so I get to reflect on my life, and that was the Socrates quote that I forgot: "The unexamined life is not worth living," and yeah, I think that's a big thing for me was that period when I was doing that.
Thank you, Pearson. Very helpful. And, another way to give people ideas of how we cope and how we cope. Had a couple of defining moments myself, but probably the most defining one was when I was physically removed from my fourth VA facility for mentioning my cannabis use. And I was outside and I was angry. And I realized that I was not going to get any help from the VA. And that I was on my own. And that I was going to have to figure this out for myself. And from there, just started searching in other ways and methods because the VA failed me. They refused to assist. And from that, it made me angry. And it motivated me to where when I was starting to work in the cannabis dispensaries that we were creating, I wanted to create an area and a facility in a way that you did not feel. I felt shame. I felt absolute horrible. I felt like a second class citizen for when I was standing there, and I didn't want people to feel that way. I didn't feel patients should be made to feel that way. So when I had my chance when working and creating dispensaries, I made sure that no one was going to be able, at least at my facility, to be treated as like a second class citizen in any way, shape, or form. We don't know if today is somebody's first day or their last day, so we treat them with the same respect accordingly. And so I just took those negative experiences from how I was treated and shaped them into positives so that at least where you came to get cannabis from me, you were not going to be treated any less. If anything, you're going to treat a little more special, because if I had just met with some basic human dignity and decency, as opposed to being, classified as a known drug user and then, refused all access to my, disability payments, et cetera, et cetera. I just didn't give a shit. I just, at that point, it was my kind of, all right, fine. I'm going to find a way to channel this into something positive. And that has continued to be an influence on me. And so that's how I am continuing my post-traumatic growth. I am still finding ways to make my dispensary, even though it's 21 years down the line, we can still improve and make things better. So how can I, um, again, take those negatives that I experience or that I felt dehumanized by and turn them into positives so that, um, yeah, people won't have that same experience, or so they don't have to feel that same way. Because I think it's no one should be able or should be able to feel that way, especially when it comes to using something as benign as medical cannabis. As you can see from all of us, we've all had great help and assistance in. It changed my life. It changed my life for the better, to the point where I again risked my freedom daily so that others could have access, because I wasn't going to wait for the VA and for doctors to finally come around. There was enough anecdotal and as well as my own use of medication of my cannabis that showed me firsthand of how I can actually channel that. So for me, I was able to create and set in a venue that I was able to then channel those negatives into constant positives, that now I can celebrate 21 years later, because it's still ongoing, but at the same time we can still do better. And now I am a mentor and a pioneer to others. So for me, I take great pride in helping others not hit the same walls and hit the same, hit their heads on the same, issues along the way. So we're going to go around now to other council members. So how did and are you continuing your post-traumatic growth today? Who would like to start? Don't everybody jump up at once.
I'll start. I gotta get out here soon too. Anyway, so I think we're probably almost wrapped up. But so the way that I guess I'm continuing with the purpose that I found, getting off of trying to get over the substances, and I keep coming back to that. But that obviously wasn't the main issue, the underlying cause, but trying to do what I can to assist others, whether they are veterans or not. So I think with cannabis specifically, some people are still hesitant. I mean, not every state is legal. I'm fortunate to be in a state where it's recreationally legal, and as long as you're 21 or older, you can go in there and not end up on a federal list. But I'm continuing to help the people that I come in contact with that need it, and I think that's like I said earlier. It gives me an odd form of responsibility to that person or those people or those vets that I help, I need to be an example, and it keeps me going. And it's I'm always flattered that people reach out to me if their son or daughter, their veteran, their loved one is having issues, and they contact me to see if I'm able to or if I'm willing to give somebody a call, or just sit down or make a phone call. And it's something that as much as it wears on me, it's something I look forward to, because I know that there's a lot of things that I've encountered. There's not much that I haven't had to deal with personally, and issues with people that have come to me. So I'm glad they come to me, and I'm trying my best to always be around my phone. So that's how I continue. I continue by trying to assist in any way I can, and you know, my family. I got 2 boys here, and I can't believe they and Megan still put up with me. Which, I mean, seriously, I'm terrible to live with. I know that. We're not gonna get into that one right now, but yeah, no, I try to do what I can, and that's keeps me going.
Well, they love you. We love you. Thank you very much, Pearson, for joining us tonight. We're going to go over to Council Member Robert Kowalski.
Yeah, what I do daily, I guess, is mainly to try and keep my vision on the future. Understanding that I'm still creating my future is a big thing that moves me forward, and having, like Pearson, a family who I know, like, it struggles sometimes being around me. Ensuring that the future set for them is bright. um One of my biggest drives has been stigma. I feel stigma has been a driving force to push people the opposite way than to seek help. um and it has become very important to me to try and break that barrier down, and try and turn the conversation to push people for help. um and so when I speak on stigma, it not only is it the stigma of the veteran, but also stigma of issues that members of our society suffer from every day, um, with mental illnesses, and normalizing the conversation that mental illness, no matter how great or small someone feels it is, it's important, especially in today's day and age when we're all on lockdown, during a pandemic, to where our mental health is really being pushed right now to the extreme, as human beings. And so it's very important to realize that mental health is a very crucial issue that society needs to look at more seriously and more positively. That it will benefit us in the long run doing so. Another issue is, homelessness. Um, Too many people in our society are homeless, and us, as members of society, need to stop looking at the homeless as an issue and start looking at the issue as what caused them to become homeless, and trying to figure out how can we fix that problem so that others don't end up in those situations. Are really my driving force, and continuing to push forward to continue to better myself so that I'm a better person. And through that, I can better portray what I feel is an important mission of making this world a better place for everybody in it. Spread peace, not war. Um, and I hope that eventually I can stay the warrior that's happy in my garden, and eventually don't have to focus on being a warrior no more. Um, so that's kind of my driving force and what keeps me going daily.
Thank you, Council Member. Let's go on over to Council Member David Bass.
Well, for me, it's learning more and more about our plant. Um, I think my knowledge of the plant is about Cannabis 101 level. And so I have to remind myself, keep an open mind, actively seek more knowledge about our plant, because I think all of us combined still only know a small amount about all of the potential of cannabis. And so that's why I was excited about the Veterans Action Council, is I knew I was going to meet brand new veterans that I've never talked to before, and gain a tremendous amount of knowledge, not only about the plant, but also about actions within the political systems at the state and federal and international level, about how we can positively affect change all the way from our community with our local government, all the way up to like Michael works at the international level. And that, that's way above my level. And so I find it very interesting. And so I think it's important for all of us to keep our minds open, to expose ourselves to knowledge from other veterans and from medical professionals and people who are activists in other areas, and just keep learning. And I'm excited about all the new things I learn about cannabis every day.
Thank you, council member. Appreciate you. Thank you for being here tonight. We're going to go over to council member Tony Landry. How are you continue your post-traumatic growth today, Tony?
I continue, it's been mentioned several times how veterans, we join the military because we have something inside, to serve our fellow humans. And my way to continue my growth is to continue doing that. The psilocybin is being fast tracked for FDA approval, and like cannabis was, some of these the industry kind of takes over the plants, and they get because of regulations. The cost is very costly to run these dispensaries and all that, but the cost is passed on to the consumer. So I'm hoping that we build some system, a community health system, that the most downtrodden person in our society can afford to access, get access through community level health. That's what's missing. We get out the military, get injuries and stuff, and we handed a bottle of pills or several bottles, like many of us can attest to. We get bag of pills and get sent home. And these community health systems are more integrated system where people get the therapy, but they don't just get sent home. They get a community with the therapy, and they get to discuss how they deal with their problems, and that's, I feel, what's kind of missing a little bit with the modern medicine is, there's not as much of that community. And so my goal is to continue growing by helping that community grow and changing the laws so we can, we don't have to fear being arrested when, we're using these medicines to help our fellow citizens.
Thank you, council member. Appreciate you sharing your experiences tonight. Going over to council member Krawitz.
Hey, man. Yeah, I was sitting here wondering if all plants are teachers in the way cannabis is. And I have such a focus on cannabis. Listen to David, kind of the same kind of idea. Cannabis has been such a teacher, and I so appreciate learning everything that the plant has to teach me. But it makes me wonder, if other plants are equally as interesting to learn from and as scalable. Because you think about it, basically our world started with a couple of military guys, the active duty troops, filling their duffel bag full of bud that they brought back from somewhere over there in Asia during Korea, probably before Vietnam, and then continued into the Vietnam era. And think about that as far as a business model. Okay, you fill up the bag with plant material. When you get home, you empty the bag and you get money for it. that's pretty straightforward business model, about as simple as you can get. And then from there, now we're learning about intellectual property, treaties, state commerce, interstate commerce, federal laws, state laws. It's just this endless environmental protections and human standards and standards of medicine versus standards of food versus industrial standards. I mean, it is an endless lesson plan that will take you, for the rest of your life to even begin to sort through. And I for me, it's just absolutely enthralling. I can't wait to get into the next thing every day. It's starting to get into the next thing. And right now I'm at that learning curve where, I bit off the federal law and then the international law. And now we're switching gears and going over to the commerce. How do we actually put this plant medicine that we've come to understand culturally and to really access, as a plant and through sort of a shaman / Chinese apothecary model, how do we take that and put it in a pharmacy and get it in the hands of all the other vets? That's a real challenge. And that's a challenge that takes sort of refitting the 19th century and the 20th century into the 21st century. And I can't imagine a more interesting thing to be working on. It's just absolutely fascinating. And I'm sure I'm growing, as a person in this process. I'll finish with this. I sent a little letter thanking the World Health Organization expert committee personally for their work, as we wrapped up the vote on December 2nd, and that part of it was done. I just thanked them, and I just threw something in there that I hadn't really thought much about until now, but I said that I felt like I had really grown as a person. In fact, our team, felt like I felt like we grew as human beings, working on this project and working with them. And I told him that I didn't know if my work would ever take me back in front of the expert committee of the World Health Organization again. But if it did, I felt like it would be a very comfortable place to come back to, kind of like coming back home. And I hope they appreciated that, because I really appreciated their effort and their work over a couple of years trying to get their brain around this stuff. They became our friends of the cannabis movement and friends of the culture and friends of the truth, which I think is an important part of our world. So definitely feel like I'm growing as a person and each step of this process.
And that's the thing, and we want y'all to realize is, we're still growing. We've kind of all become butterflies in our own way. We've had to all find our own chrysalis along the way, and kind of reamalgamate ourselves to become what we became. I am also with David, very happy to be here with Veterans Action Council. I feel this is another way that I'm continuing my growth. Being around other veterans, I've kind of been a lone wolf doing things for many decades. So for myself to be working more closely with other veterans around the country and helping to mentor as well as to learn at the same time is it's a wonderful, exciting challenge, as we know, because there's a lot happening right now, and these are exciting times. So realize that each one of us had our own ways to find our own journeys, and that's why we wanted to have this discussion tonight, to implore to y'all that there is no specific way, there is no specific path, there is no time frame. The key is to recognize within yourself, do your own research, go out there and network. There's a lot of opportunities now where there was no industry or in cannabis world when I started out, but now there's actual national associations one can join. There's state associations you can join, from the medical to the industrial to the hemp. So there's different ways and aspects that you can plug in. And again, one of the more universal messages from us tonight was we're all in service to help others. And part of our healing that we have found in our way is to step outside of ourselves and outside of our comfort zones and to self-challenge ourselves to help others. And in doing so, that has enriched our lives beyond measure. And we hope that is an example to each and every one of you, that you can find your own way through your healing so that you can find your way on the other side, reaching out a helping hand to others so that they can benefit from your love and appreciation. So I want to thank again our council members tonight, David Bass, Michael Krowitz, Tony Landry, Robert Kowalski, and Pearson Crosby. It was a very worthy discussion. I hope you're able to grab a few tidbits from here. And again, we will be posting this live on Saturday night on YouTube. So please leave a comment or subscribe to the Veterans Action Council YouTube channel. We'll be back here next Friday night on Facebook Live. Same bat time, same bat channel. So thank you all once again, and have a great rest of your evening, and Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
And